So today we're looking at the Battle of Fontenoy by the Great History March, and this is France versus England in the War of Austrian Succession. So I don't think I know anything about this conflict, but from what I'm guessing from the title, is that we always do know France and England, the UK, and their famous rivalry throughout history. But I'm guessing that something is going to happen with Austria, and then there's going to be some type of power grab or vacuum, and France and England are going to get involved. That's really general, but that's what I'm guessing from the title. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than I don't know anything about this conflict, but I'm really looking forward to finding out what it's all about. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get to it. Let's watch the Battle of Fontenoy by HistoryMarche.
On October 20th, 1740, Charles VI, Holy Roman Emperor and last male heir of the House of Habsburg, died at the age of 55. Ruling over a wide swath of Central Europe, the Habsburgs were also the traditional rulers of the Holy Roman Empire, having dominated German politics for the past 3 centuries. The seeds of renewed conflict in Europe in 1740 were sown in the peace agreements of the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713, which ended the War of the Spanish Succession. The Pragmatic Sanction, one of the many edicts in the treaty, stated that the throne of the Holy Roman Empire in Vienna should pass to Charles's eldest son, or in the absence of a son, to his eldest daughter, Maria Theresa. When Charles died without siring an heir in 1740, Maria Theresa ascended the throne of the Habsburg monarchy and became heir to the Holy Roman Empire.
Okay, yeah, I know where we are now. Alright, so, everything has just come back to me from the Frederick the Great series and by Old Britannia's Habsburg Dynasty series. Essentially Maria Theresa kind of succeeded at a time where the the Habsburg monarchy was in a really dire situation. Like, cool on her dad, to get her on the throne, which, as we know, women being the main source of power in history is kind of a bit, it's usually, about, dudes being in charge. But at the same time, while it's cool that he managed to do that, also not cool because she came up in a time that wasn't the best, and she essentially got jumped, lost Saxony to Frederick, and, no, it wasn't Saxony, it was Silesia. Yeah, sorry. But, she lost Silesia, and essentially had to really help pull the Habsburgs out. And I have to say, from all the women in history that we've covered on this channel, Maria Theresa is actually my favorite, because I feel nothing but sympathetic towards her, and I'm really on her side, because, the fact that she managed to, become the main head of the Habsburg monarchy in a really turbulent time, managed to pull them through, and, really help build up Habsburg prestige is nothing short but great. And, overall, I'm a very big fan of her. Even in the Frederick the Great series we covered by House of History, I was still really sympathetic towards her. I've never turned on her, because she really is, she had a lot going against her, but like I said, the way she managed to pull through all of it makes her probably my favorite, woman historical figure we've covered on this channel. And, yeah.
Despite the edict in the Treaty of Utrecht, Prince-Elector Charles Albert of Bavaria challenged Maria Theresa's right to inherit the Holy Roman Empire. He cited Europe's traditional and ancient Salic law, which stated that women are excluded from the laws of succession. Charles had the support of the Kingdom of France, the Kingdom of Prussia, and the Electorate of Bavaria. The Pragmatic Alliance backed Maria Theresa, which was comprised of Austria, the Kingdom of Great Britain, the Electorate of Hanover, and the Dutch Republic. As the conflict widened, Spain, Sardinia, Saxony, Sweden, and even the Russian Empire were drawn into the struggle for power in Central Europe. The pretext for war was Maria Theresa's right to inherit from her father, but in reality, France, Prussia, and Bavaria saw the new conflict as an opportunity to challenge Habsburg power. On December 16, 1740, King Frederick II of Prussia launched a preemptive invasion of the Austrian lands in Silesia, marking the start of the First Silesian War in Germany. This was the opening act of the larger War of the Austrian Succession.
Your mistake was not having the patience to wait. Ours was exposing ourselves to destruction and not making use of our victory. Earl of Stair.
The war between the two sides was conducted in 3 theatres across Central Europe, the Austrian Netherlands, and northern Italy, as well as on the high seas. On June 27, 1743, the Pragmatic Army, comprised of Austrian, British, and Hanoverian forces, dealt a decisive defeat to the French army, led by the Duke of Noailles at Dettingen in the Electorate of Mainz. During the engagement, King George II of Britain led the Pragmatic Army, marking the last time a British monarch took part in a battle.
Oh, wow.
At Dettingen, the French suffered 5,000 casualties. Combined casualties for the Pragmatic Army were only about half the French numbers. Although the Battle of Dettingen ended in a major tactical victory for the Pragmatic Army, they failed to follow up the success with a strategic victory for the campaign in Germany, because of King George's unwillingness to pursue the French after the Great Victory. The next year, 1744, saw Austria and Central Germany become the principal theatre of war in the Second Silesian War. It was in 1744 that Marshal Saxe entered the scene for the French. 49-year-old Maurice de Saxe, Comte de Saxe, was the illegitimate son of King Augustus II of Poland-Lithuania and the Elector of Saxony. Newly promoted to the rank of Marshal of France, Saxe defended Flanders with 30,000 men against a pragmatic force of twice that size. Saxe had an impressive military record, having served under the Duke of Marlborough in the 1709 Battle of Malplaquet during the War of the Spanish Succession, as well as joining Prince Eugene of Savoy against the Ottomans in the 1717 Siege of Belgrade during the Austro-Turkish War. Meanwhile, Field Marshal George Wade, the Allied commander, readied a campaign plan centered around seizing the important French fortress of Lille. If the Allies took Lille, they would greatly endanger the French position in Flanders. Controlling Lille would have also provided the Allies a base for an advance on Paris itself. However, Saxe pressed Wade ceaselessly, keeping him off balance. In one instance, the French surprised and overwhelmed the Allied headquarters. Unable to stave off the pressure, Wade surrendered the initiative and retreated to winter quarters at Antwerp.
Are you researching dental?
Alright, pretty great move on Saxe's part, taking away the initiative and not allowing his enemy to, fully conduct his plans unharassed. I have to say, that's a pretty good move, opening move from his part.
Prince William Augustus, the Duke of Cumberland, assumed command of the Allied army. The 24-year-old Duke was King George's second son. Having distinguished himself at Dettingen, he was highly thought of by his men. Britain's allies readily accepted him as Captain General of His Majesty's forces serving in Europe, and Commander-in-Chief of the Pragmatic Army. At his headquarters in the Lille stronghold, Saxe meticulously planned for the upcoming 1745 campaign, insisting the offensive must start earlier than the Allies expected. With a preemptive strike, Saxe would gain the initiative in the campaign and force the Allies to react to his moves rather than the other way around. Meanwhile, the Duke of Cumberland prepared for a...
Alright, that's what I like to hear. So obviously, we've said this so many times, and I just have to keep reiterating. Taking the initiative is essential in war. Like, you never want to be on the back foot. 9 times out of 10 in this channel's history that we've covered, he who takes the initiative usually comes out on top. And Saxe recognizes that. And so he is wanting to take it from, you know, the Pragmatic Army in Cumberland and make sure that they're reacting to him just smart, you know what I mean? And sometimes I feel like I'm like an analyst, like like those sports people who are like commentating and giving their critiques of things. Sometimes I feel like that on this channel when I'm talking about this stuff. Even though I'm not qualified because I'm no military man or historian, but oh well, we've seen enough to pick up on trends on this channel, right? We've seen enough battles.
Drive on Mons, where Allied intelligence reports placed a French army, a buffer fortress town between France and the Austrian Netherlands. Not expecting that Mons could resist for too long, Cumberland marched his army out of winter quarters towards the town. Unknown to Cumberland, however, Saxe's plan was to attack the fortress of Tournai, situated some 30 miles northwest of Mons. The French marshal dispatched 22,000 troops to besiege Tournai, which was garrisoned by 9,000 Dutch troops. Maintaining initiative, Saxe then marshaled his main army of 50,000 men and 100 cannon to occupy the area between Fontenoy and Antoine, just southeast of Tournai. Holding this position, he blocked the Pragmatic Army's advance to Tournai.
Alright, yeah. So obviously he's gotten one up on the Pragmatic Army, at least in terms of making a move that they couldn't predict. And now he's ensuring with his large force that they can't easily relieve what he has just besieged. Okay, so it seems like he's ready for the fight. Like, this is where it's gonna happen. It seems like he's taking the defensive position, and his enemy would have to react to go and try to relieve the siege, but come facing him. So it seems like Saxe is prepared and, like, ready for the fight. I'm wondering how the Pragmatic Army in Cumberland are going to react to all this.
Saxe tasked his men with fortifying the towns of Fontenoy and Antoine. The attacking army would have to struggle through a rock-filled ditch while under fire to engage the entrenched musketeers, positioned atop earthworks behind a high wall. 3 redoubts strengthened the fortified line between the 2 villages. The marshal had 2 more redoubts built to the northeast, the Redoute de Chambonnat and Redoute II, on the edge of the Bois de Barry, a sprawling maintained wood. A patch of trees on the west end of the forest was cut down to give the 2 redoubts a clear field of fire against Allied troops, should they try to advance between Fontenoy and the Bois de Barry. However, Saxe decided not to fortify the gap between Fontenoy and the Bois de Barry, believing that the marshy ravine that cut through the area made it impassable. Instead, he deployed the Garde Francaise in that position to defend the sector.
Alright, that's interesting. I wonder if he's correct about that, about the natural defense there. I mean, we've seen several times in this channel's history where generals thought, alright, this area is in can't be easily penetrated due to natural barriers or whatever, so I won't like pay much attention to it. And usually that can come back to bite them. So I'm wondering if that'll come into play or he really is correct. I don't know. I guess I don't know about this battle in particular, so I'm just speculating. But we'll see. At least he does have something. It's not like completely ignored, but like, yeah.
Additionally, he posted the 2 battalions of the Arquebusiers de Grasson Brigade in the woods to open fire into the flank of any force attempting an attack on the Redoute II, the westernmost of the 2 earthworks. Despite his vigorous preparations, Marshal Saxe had fallen ill on the eve of the coming battle with dropsy and needed to travel by carriage. Nevertheless, he continued overseeing the build-up of defenses. By the evening of May 10th, 1745, the Pragmatic Army, numbering 50,000 troops and 93 cannon, appeared in front of Fontenoy.
Okay, so he mentioned 50,000 for Saxe when he went there, and now Cumberland and the Pragmatic Army have 50,000. So numerically, they're pretty evenly matched. So there's no numerical superiority advantage for either side, it seems.
Having marched all day in muddy conditions, a thick fog loomed low over the fields, making it nearly impossible for Cumberland to estimate with any accuracy the strength of the French positions.
Okay, so let's see. Who am I gonna think is gonna win? So far, I'm thinking... So far, maybe Saxe. I'm leaning towards Saxe winning this encounter. Obviously, he took the initiative. He's the one who forced this battle. He is prepared extensively, and he's the defending position, so that can be a benefit in itself. And now this, like, Cumberland has not taken the initiative, and now the Wedders, his troops have been marching all day, so maybe a bit of exhaustion if they get to fighting already, so, you know, that can affect, his soldiers. And also, thanks to this, Wedder, he can accurately predict, as he just said, certain things. So far, it seems like everything is primed and ready for a French victory. But you never know with history, anything can happen. But right now, I'm leaning towards the French winning this encounter.
Nevertheless, he concluded that the Redoute II was the main objective and needed to be captured for his attack to succeed. With this in mind, Cumberland instructed Brigadier General Richard Ingoldsby to advance with his brigade of 2,000 men, comprised of 5 foot regiments, and clear out the Bois de Barry of any French troops, and then seize the Redoute II. The sweeping attack was to be the Pragmatic Army's opening move of the morning. Cumberland ordered Ingoldsby to head straight for Redoute II and capture the battery. He was to turn the guns on the French, but if that couldn't be accomplished, he was instructed to spike them. A detail of British artillerymen joined the attack for this purpose.
They rushed upon us with more violence than ever sea did when driven by a tempest.
At 6 a.m. on May 11th, 1745, Ingoldsby's brigade launched its assault, marking the start of the Battle of Fontenoy. The French infantry in the Bois de Barry tore into Ingoldsby's right flank with intense musket volleys as the British redcoats pushed forward. Refusing advice to send light infantry to clear the woods, Ingoldsby requested that 3 6-pounder guns be brought up to support the attack, not realizing that halting the attack until the artillery was brought forward would waste valuable time. Increasingly frustrated with Ingoldsby's delays, Cumberland rode across the battlefield to help direct the artillery fire. He trained the guns on the Bois de Barry and had them fire canister shot to drive off the French from the tree line. Satisfied that the artillery support would prompt Ingoldsby to continue the attack, Cumberland rode back to attend to other urgent matters on the field. With Colonel Sir Robert Munro's Royal Highlanders Regiment leading the charge, Ingoldsby's men advanced through muddy ravines and sunken roads, but were stopped dead by heavy fire from the Normandy Brigade positioned in front of them. The sharp shooting of the men from the Arc de Bousier de Grassin was particularly deadly. The French troops in the back passed loaded muskets to the front to be fired, keeping the British redcoats pinned down. The frustrated Cumberland again rode back, but could not convince Ingoldsby to advance.
Okay, already this is why I'm still leaning towards the French so far. Because this isn't really the best start at the moment. This chain of command issue is now starting to rear its head. Ingoldsby is being very, like, he's not pressing forward as, you know, Cumberland wants, and Cumberland has to keep showing up to personally beat. Yeah, that's not the strongest of starts, and kind of shows an issue with command here.
Despite the continuous pressure from the French musket fire, Ingoldsby in fact greatly overestimated their numbers and, instead of attacking, he remained on the defensive. All the while the French bombardment continued. Luckily for the Allies, due to the distance, some shots dropped and rolled through their lines. Exasperated, Cumberland sent out the 15 squadrons of the British Horse Regiment, commanded by Lieutenant General James Campbell, to draw French musket and cannon fire onto themselves in a desperate attempt to force Ingoldsby to move. Campbell soaked up the pressure and admirably led his men forward, the continuous shelling from the Redoute II felling many of his British and Hanoverian troopers. But one cannonball struck true, mortally wounding Campbell in the thigh, almost completely shearing off his leg. Major General John Lindsay, the Earl of Crawford, assumed command and immediately withdrew his cavalry squadrons from the firing line. He retreated behind the British infantry to reform. As the morning wore on, King Louis XV crossed the Scheldt River at Calais with the Dauphin Louis and Marc René de Voyer. The Comte d'A...
Alright, so far the field of battle has mainly only opened on this side, in the Berry side, and it has not gone well for the Pragmatic Army, between losing, you know, a cavalry commander, not dislodging the French, and now the conflict of, you know, those in charge between Cumberland and Ingoldsby. Yeah, that's a really bad start for the Pragmatic Army, but we still have plenty of time, so I'm like wondering if they're gonna get the upset somehow. Just not a strong start overall.
Janson and French Minister of War, moving up to a vantage point behind the French lines to observe the progress of the battle. 2 squadrons of the Garde de Cheval followed close as an escort to the king. Marshal Saxe, worried that Cumberland's concerted effort in the Bois de Barry would turn the French left flank, ordered all available gun crews to shell the Pragmatic Army once the mist cleared. When the French artillery barrage commenced, the Allied batteries responded. The protracted artillery exchange was largely inconsequential. Once the mass bombardment stopped, Lieutenant General John Ligonier pushed ahead with his infantry. French cannonade from fixed positions erupted, and smaller guns unleashed on the Allied infantry, which was now in range. The Anglo-Hanoverian infantry advanced resolutely in the face of the artillery fire, closing ranks whenever the French cannon blasted holes in their line. Once they advanced into position, the second line pressed ahead. Cumberland ordered 7 light cannons forward to put pressure on the French gun crews. Louis the Duc de Gramont, commander of the Garde Francaise, could easily be seen mounted atop his white steed, despite the smoke and dust. British gunners took aim and fired round shot at his position. He was struck and mortally wounded, a cannonball shattering his thigh.
Ooh.
Saxe promptly replaced the fallen general with Louis-Antoine de Gaunt.
Dang, holy, my goodness, man. These cannons are catching, like, bodies right now of leaders, so, oh my goodness.
And seeing how exposed the Garde Francaise and Garde Suisse were to Allied infantry fire, he ordered them back to a safer position to avoid more needless casualties. Once more, Cumberland spoke to Ingoldsby, this time ordering him to consolidate his position in the Bois de Barry and stop all attempts to capture the Redoute II. By now, the Duke may have received reports that the large infantry reserves on the French left greatly outnumbered Ingoldsby's brigade. With such a smaller force, capturing the Redoute II would be impossible. Thus, Cumberland had little choice but to abandon the push on the right. In the southern sector, Prince Karl...
Alright, that's interesting. That's probably the smart move. Like, even if Ingoldsby did press forward, yeah, these guys, he would be severely outnumbered. So I guess consolidating his foothold here is not such a, probably a logical decision from Cumberland.
August Friedrich of Waldeck-Pyrmont heard the battle raging across the field and interpreted this as the moment to advance on the French positions between Antoine and Fontenoy. 4 6-pounder shots marked the start of the attack. 2 Dutch mounted columns drove forward to form up in support of the infantry. Long battle lines of blue-clad Dutchmen marched ahead with fixed bayonets towards the French right flank. Waiting in the trenches, the French infantry steadied their aim, then unleashed a heavy fusillade on the Dutch. French batteries blasted holes right through the Dutch ranks. Pummeled and disoriented, much of the Waldeck infantry regiment drifted to the right. This exposed a large gap in the Dutch formation. Advancing up the slope, the Dutch infantry pressed on to the village of Fontenoy. Waldeck sent out 3 dragoon squadrons to restore the proper direction of attack for the Dutch formation. As they drew closer, the French redoubt menacingly bristled with guns, waiting to take them on. Despite being partially concealed by the mist, the Dutch battalion stood little chance against a heavy French artillery fire. French musketry gunned down most of their officers in the front ranks. Still, the Dutch refused to vacate the line, valiantly pressing forward. But, unable to make significant headway, they eventually withdrew to reform their shaken ranks. The Prince of Waldeck-Pyrmont then sent in the 2nd Dutch column, but they were blasted by the same 16 guns from the 3 batteries.
Okay, so the Dutch are taking quite the beating, huh? So, yeah, he mentioned, HistoryMarche said that he interpreted, to start his portion of the fighting because of what he overheard on the other side. And again, the defensive position that we're seeing on display is just amazing. Like, Saxe really helped, especially on this side in particular, really fortify themselves. And again, like, we're watching the enemy, Waldeck's side get kind of thrashed right now. So yeah.
That the 1st column had encountered. The attack of the 2nd formation also faltered under the relentless French fire. As the battered Dutch staggered back to their positions, one of their cavalry squadrons routed from the battle, galloping entirely off the battlefield. Many of those regrouping were still within the range of the French artillery, which bombarded them with no retaliation. The floundering Dutch attack had lasted no more than an hour. At 11 a.m., Cumberland ordered the Hanoverian Borschlanger regiment to drive the French from the Bois de Barry at all costs. But just like Ingoldsby, the Hanoverians were met with a hail of artillery fire from the Redoute II. Finally abandoning the effort on the right, the Duke moved 2 regiments, including Monroe's Highlanders, to the left flank to reinforce a renewed Dutch attack. Field Marshal Christian Moritz Koenigsegg Rottenfels, commanding the Austrian troops in the Allied army, requested that another 4 British howitzers be brought to the left to support the attack. With the Borschlangers positioned next to the guns, the Duke of Cumberland entrusted Colonel Scipio Duroy with commanding the regiment in the upcoming attack. Duroy arrayed the men, but failed to signal the Dutch to his left to prepare to attack at the same time. More disruption came from Ingoldsby's sector when he was wounded by a French musket ball and had to be carried to safety. Hanoverian Major General Ludwig von Zastrow assumed command. Monroe and Duroy advanced but were unsupported by the Dutch, who still waited for the signal.
My goodness. Yeah, I'm starting to notice from the Pragmatic Army, there seems to be like communication issues, especially among the commanders and stuff, like misinterpretation of signs, not fully being able, Cumberland and his earlier thing having to personally leave to deal with the right situation multiple times. There seems to be an issue with the command structure and, like, communication. Meanwhile, the French, by comparison, all united, everything's going well, at least right now, and they're just defending, so yeah, this seems to be quite the thing I'm noticing with the, Pragmatic Army side.
Nevertheless, Monroe's rapid advance through a ravine surprised the French. He ordered his Highlanders to lie prone upon receiving the French volleys, and then rise to fire their own. But Monroe himself refused to go to ground, not wanting to look undignified to his men. Having brought their broadswords into battle, the Scotsmen mauled the Dauphin regiment in close quarters, hunting them down among the trenches, the French troops only able to block the sword blows with their muskets. Monroe's men overran a French battery, felling most of the gunners, who spotted the Scots too late, charging from the smoke. Saxe hurriedly...
Yeah, this is quite the problem. Okay, I thought that was going to be more of a disaster due to them going without any support, but they're actually already getting in already. Wow. Yeah, this is a problem.
Sent the Duroy regiment to help repair the faltering line at Fontenoy, finally enabling the defenders to drive back Monroe's and Duroy's men. Only now did Waldeck get word, promptly sending the Dutch infantry forward. But by now Duroy's unsupported regiments had retreated, having suffered severe casualties during their attack on Fontenoy. Waldeck's troops were met with a hail of round shot and canister, and had to withdraw. The disjointed Allies...
Yeah, disjointed's the optimal word. Imagine they had all march at the same time. Like, look at how far the Scots made it unsupported. Like, a full-on support might have actually done even more damage to this line from the French, so... Yeah, miscommunication and the disjointedness of, the Pragmatic Army seems to really be working against them at the moment.
Attack, failing to achieve a breakthrough. Despite Cumberland's best efforts, Saxe's right flank and center firmly held their original positions.
Okay, gentlemen of the French Guards, would you care to fire? British 1st Foot Guards addressing the French Guards at Fontenoy.
Now came the turn of the vaunted British Line infantry to try to break through the French centre. Formed into 2 lines, they numbered 16,000 men. Cumberland joined them on horseback with his staff as final preparations were made. On the right, taking posts of honour in the first line, were the 1st Foot Guards, 3rd Foot Guards, and the 2nd Foot Guards. Next in seniority were the Royal Brigade and Onslow's Brigade. Arrayed behind them in the second line were Howard's Brigade, Sowell's Brigade, and the remainder of the Hanoverian Brigade. Cumberland's plan was to drive his Anglo-Hanoverian infantry right through the French left centre, and then swing left to roll up their lines.
Let me get that one more time.
Drive his Anglo-Hanoverian Brigade.
Okay, sorry. I want to get that plan one more time. What the heck?
3rd Foot Guards and the 2nd Foot Guards. Next in seniority were the Royal Brigade and Onslow's Brigade. Arrayed behind them in the second line were Howard's Brigade, Sowell's Brigade, and the remainder of the Hanoverian Brigade. Cumberland's plan was to drive his Anglo-Hanoverian infantry right through the French left centre, and then swing left to roll up their lines. Simultaneously, Duroc would attack Fontenoy and press the French positions there, thus drawing fire away from the Allied advance in the centre.
Yeah, and we know Saxe didn't fortify the center here due to believing about the, better natural defense of this area. It was a swamp, right? Apologies for not remembering. The point is, he believed that's why he didn't fortify the center as much as the other areas. So I'm wondering, if Cumberland could get through here, this could actually come back to bite Saxe. That decision. But that's if Cumberland is able to get through here. And even then, he still has to face the center around, so I guess we'll see.
The British advanced for 800 yards up the wet incline, maintaining formation while pushing through the marshy ravine that Saxe deemed impassable. French guns raked them from both sides, felling soldiers and opening holes in their ranks, which were closed by the disciplined British troops dressing to the right. As they reached the top, they ran into the French and Swiss Guard brigades and 3 regiments, appearing from a sunken road just 70 yards away. Moments later, the French heavy close-range volley momentarily stunned the surprised British, but many shots missed their marks as the French aimed too high. Those falling in the front of the Allied line were promptly replaced by men from the rear. The resolute British returned fire, shooting by platoon rather than by rank. Muskets loaded in the rear were passed forward to the men in the front, the rolling fire of the British hard pressing the French. After their musket volleys, the British pushed on through the smoke, steadily closing the distance with the French with each fusillade until they got within point-blank range. Rolling British volleys ripped through the French and Swiss Guards brigades, with both breaking under the weight of the assault. As they withdrew, some 400 dead and dying French troops were left behind. On the French left, the Irish Brigade, commanded by Charles O'Brien, the Comte de Thomond, moved to the front to strengthen the French line. But they had to turn back, having received no support from the French battalions, many of whom were by now on the verge of fleeing. Volleys coming from the Redoute II and the Grassin light infantry caused confusion among the British ranks. But order was quickly restored. The men fixed bayonets and relentlessly moved forward, urged on by the Duke of Cumberland.
Alright, they managed to get through the marshes, which is very impressive. So this could come back to bite Saxe. And the thing is, you have to give it that these guys have discipline, and that discipline is on great display. Despite all the shots they're taking from multiple directions, they do not break, they're not faltering, they're not falling back. This is great discipline on display here, which is telling me that things might, again, like I've been leaning towards the French winning, but this whole getting past the marsh situation really could turn everything around, you know?
Sax's men in the left centre low on ammunition, their position was carried. The staunch British infantry had seemingly pulled victory from what had previously looked like near certain defeat, having all but routed Sax's best infantry regiments. It now seemed that the French morale was on the verge of collapse. Worse, news came that the king was being advised to retreat to safety. Marshal Saxe hurried off the field to Louis's tent to inform the king of the situation on the battlefield. Noailles stated that the battle was lost. He and several court advisors urged the king and Dauphin to quickly withdraw across the Scheldt back to safety. Upon hearing this, Saxe was outraged, furiously demanding that Noailles and the other advisors show themselves from the king's entourage and berating them for their defeatist attitudes. King Louis himself emerged from the crowd and calmly affirmed his decision to stand by Saxe and his army. Saxe jerked his horse around and remarked, "We must all conquer or die," then rode back toward the battlefield.
Okay, we've seen that phrase come up quite a few times in this channel's history. Conquer or die. It's such a unique phrase that I've noticed has popped up a few times. But, alright, Saxe. Saxe did a lot of great preparation, but again, that marsh area he deemed impossible, it has seemed now the impossible has been done, as, you know, the pragmatic army has crossed it and now began routing his best infantry. So Saxe has his work to do to now fix this on the spot, essentially. Again, now things are looking completely different, huh? It seems like the pragmatic army has snatched, like, victory from the jaws of defeat, but we have a few more minutes left, like around 11, so, anything can happen, I guess, but things are starting to look, you see the tides are shifting.
Back on the front, the disciplined British infantry resolutely pressed forward, shifting slightly to the left, away from the harassing fire on the edge of the Bois de Paris, while calmly continued firing rolling volleys at the French centre. The Aubeterre regiment harassed their left to try slowing their advance, but they broke under the deadly volley fire. Saxe then moved up the Roy regiment from Fontenoy, but they too were driven off by the heavy fusillade of the British foot guards, taking heavy losses. The Hainaut, Royal and the Vassaux regiments were brought forward from the right to close the gap and restore the French line. While they managed to hold their position, they could not advance, the British rolling volleys decimating their ranks. In what became a pivotal moment of the battle, Saxe ordered a cavalry charge. The British, hearing the thunderous gallop, refused their flanks and brought the 3-pounder cannon forward to help disrupt the French cavalry advance. But the mounted charge lacked the strength that Saxe had expected. This was due to Louis-Charles Le Tellier, the Comte d'Estrees and commander of the Brigade de Royal Cravats, failing to send his entire cavalry force, bringing forward only 4 regiments, just 2,500 men, to attack the British.
Okay, now we're seeing, earlier on it was the pragmatic army having, like, issues among leaders. Now it seems like Saxe is now starting to happen. Dang, the tide is turning, oh my goodness. Again, like, the discipline of the British is amazing. It is single-handedly turning the tide of the entire war, battle, because of just their great discipline. Oh my goodness.
The mounted regiments advanced at a trotting pace towards the enemy line, the cavaliers keeping their horses from charging to prevent them from tiring quickly. Once the cavaliers came within 50 yards, the British line unleashed hell. The French, unable to close the distance and take on the British with their swords, fired carbines and pistols as they wheeled about. 2 additional French mounted regiments charged to assist them, but were met with the same deadly British volleys. The few cavaliers who were able to force their horses to close in were met by the muskets and bayonets of the 2nd Foot Guards. The Royal Roussillon regiment approached at a trot once again, the riders snaking their way through a field of dead and wounded horses and men, only to be repelled like those before them. While Saxe's cavalry regiments failed to break the British line, they succeeded in stopping their relentless advance. And as they pressed forward again, the British realized that there was not enough room near the top of the slope to keep their formation. The last obstacle to victory appeared to be 2 fresh lines of French cavalry in the center. But as the British advanced, the narrowing gap and the threat of French artillery raking their flanks and rear forced the men to instinctively move away from the flanks, thus narrowing their lines and gradually deepening their formations towards the rear. In the end, they formed 3 sides of a massive square with the rear open. Inside the square, the Hanoverians under Major General Ludwig von Zastrow were the reserve. But the further the Allied formations advanced, the more exposed their flanks and rear became.
You can get this fixed.
At 12:30 p.m., Saxe...
That's interesting. So, I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, what they just did, but, at least the way HistoryMarche says it, like, obviously, now that their lines are breaking due to the terrain, and we've seen that oftentimes when the discipline of lines and stuff can be disrupted, it's usually never a good thing, though this instinctive multiple front of defense, I'm not sure if it'll be beneficial to them or not, but almost a whole square, Saxe is in a really bad position though himself. Like, his cavalry was beaten back pretty hard, and all he has is cavalry to help defend the center, so...
decided that now was the time to counterattack. Gathering 5 shattered regiments that managed to rally, he ordered 3 to engage the west side of the Anglo-Hanoverian square, with another 2 attacking the north side. Massed on narrow fronts, the French outnumbered the British, who had endured the artillery bombardment for hours. Saxe's last-ditch effort was almost foiled by Joseph de Randon, the Comte d'Apcher, when he led 2 cavalry regiments in a disorganized attack against the northwest corner of the Allied formation. 4 squadrons from the Noailles cavalry regiment punched through the line of the 3rd Foot Guards before charging at full tilt into the Hanoverian reserves. The lead squadron was literally mowed down, with only 14 survivors. Estrie sent a cavalry brigade to protect d'Apcher's retreat, but this action blocked the advance of the Irishmen, causing confusion. Cumberland, sensing the indecisiveness among the French leadership, instructed the Earl of Albemarle to order the 2nd Foot Guards to advance on Estrie's cavalry support and open fire from close range. Cumberland then sent 2 regiments to push south towards Fontenoy to create space for his army to move away from the Bois de Barry. King Louis directed Louis-Philippe d'Orléans, the Comte de Montesson, to send the Maison de Roi and carabiners of the French cavalry forward to divert pressure away from Fontenoy. But they attacked without orders, surging towards the British piecemeal in a repeat of the earlier French cavalry charges. As they closed in, they were cut to pieces by British volley fire.
Oh boy, the Irish are the last hope because everyone else is getting their butt kicked right now. Dude, I was so confident that the French were gonna win, but as of right now, I'm still like I'm like kind of like faltering. No, I'm like, holy crap, can they? Like, the Irish now seem to be like the last hope. Listen, I already made my bet with the French. I'm not gonna jump ship right now, but this looks bad. This looks really bad, guys. Alright, let's see if the Irish can help at all.
With the French army on the brink of collapse, Saxe was informed that the guns at Fontenoy had depleted their supply of round shot and canister. They were firing blank cartridges. Saxe, now certain that the superior British infantry was exhausted, ordered all available artillery to aim at the Anglo-Hanoverians and brought forward his last remaining fresh troops. The Irish brigade saw little action, and a few more units were still in good shape.
Alright, so there's a sense of freshness, and again, the British infantry has probably the best display of discipline, but they have been taking quite a beating themselves, and have been fighting for non-stop since they've arrived. So, I'm wondering if Saxe is correct in his assessment that they're a bit worn out, this could help, but again, maybe discipline might come out on top, so we'll see.
All told, Saxe had 13 fresh battalions for an attack against the exhausted British. Saxe's right flank stayed put. By 1 p.m., a somber mood plagued the French high-ranking officers, except for Marshal Saxe, who remained optimistic for a French victory. Marshal Noailles urged the king and the Dauphin to retreat to safety behind the Scheldt River. But Louis did not entertain this idea. He would not betray Saxe's trust. Although all of Saxe's local assaults were repelled, this strategy did succeed in stopping the British column's relentless advance. Now was the time to strike. Saxe rallied the Normandy and Vaisseau regiments, supported by the French and...
Dude, I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, Saxe, everyone's, like, the king is literally putting all his faith in him. Saxe's attacks have been repelled, but he did, like he said, he did stop the main British plan of rolling up the center and moving on to the right of Fontenoy. So he has succeeded, at least in stopping the main plan of the British, but again, it really all comes down to now this counterattack. We only have a few minutes left, but this is really it, guys. Like, if this doesn't work, the battle's lost. I did not expect it to be this close, to be honest.
Swiss guards and ordered them back into the fray. He instructed the Irish troops, one of his last remaining reserves, to attack the Allied positions in front of them. To the sounds of fife and drum, the Irish troops pressed forward as the rolling British volleys decimated their ranks. The stubborn Irishmen persevered, engaging the Redcoats in fierce hand-to-hand combat. Initially, the British managed to repel the Irish assault, but the tide began to turn in favor of the French when the Normandy regiment charged the Allied battery in the back of the square, relieving pressure on their compatriots. In a joint charge...
Yeah, the Irish are also fresh. Like, they've seen little combat. Meanwhile, the British have basically been fighting non-stop. So, with that now, with them being a bit more relieved here, the Irish definitely have that going for them. Just the freshness, and not being as exhausted.
The French and Irish troops pushed back the British. Having realized that his army had been fought to a standstill, Cumberland shifted his focus to disengaging his troops as safely as possible, a most difficult task. As the British and Hanoverians commenced their withdrawal, Saxe once more ordered forward 2 cavalry regiments. Despite the British foot companies forming into squares, the French cavalry charge proved too formidable, shattering their lines.
Oh
the
my
remaining
goodness.
positions of the exhausted Redcoats finally disintegrated as the Allied army began fighting their way eastward.
Okay, they have to get away now. Okay. It seems like Saxe has done it, and he has helped turn the tide. Okay, anything can happen. 3 minutes, they turn around and instantly win. That'd be hilarious. But dude, like I said, that kind of like got me like, oh my gosh, are they gonna pull it off? Like, wow.
Now, the same bottleneck leading down the slope posed an obstacle to the counter-attacking French, much like it had to the British earlier in the day.
Wow.
Saxe channeled up to 30 battalions through the narrow
Now
passage
they're being chased, holy crap, by everyone.
in pursuit of the retreating British. To shield Cumberland's withdrawal, the Earl of Crawford deployed his cavalry brigades. As the French artillery fire couldn't be avoided, Crawford directed his troops into the midst of the French infantry, impeding their progress at a heavy cost to his horses and cavaliers. Saxe, realizing that further pursuit was futile, stopped his troops. The two armies gradually disengaged, and the Battle of Fontenoy came to a bloody conclusion around 2 p.m. The French marshal made his way to inform the king about the triumph of the French forces.
Wow.
The Battle of Fontenoy was one of the bloodiest battles of the 18th century, and the French just barely won it through sheer determination and ferocious counterattacks. It cost them 6,000 to 8,000 men killed or wounded. The Pragmatic Army left 7,560 to 10,000 men killed or wounded, littered across the battlefield of Fontenoy, along with 2,000 men and 40 guns captured.
I'm so happy I didn't change my allegiance. I said I was ultimately right. I'm happy about that. Sometimes I have fun with these videos because I'll like make a prediction and we'll see if it comes right. I'm glad my prediction proved correct that the French would win. Though I'm not gonna lie, I almost faltered. I mean, I did falter, but I remained loyal to you, Saxe, at the end, and you proved me right, thank God. So, and the fate of the king too. So I'm happy that I stuck with that. But man, still though, that was close, guys. That was incredibly close and terrifying. Like, it really seemed like Cumberland could have snatched victory from there. But Saxe's determination proved the stronger of the two.
With no hope of relief, the Dutch garrison at Tournai surrendered unconditionally to the French on June 20th. The French army then marched into the Austrian Netherlands, threatening the British connection to continental Europe. Through his brilliant operations in the Austrian Netherlands, Marshal Saxe cemented his reputation as one of the greatest generals of the 18th century. He had restored French supremacy in Western Europe. The Battle of Fontenoy, bloody as it may have been, was one of the decisive battles of the War of the Austrian Succession, ceding the initiative in the Low Countries theatre to the French. Saxe would make sure that they would not surrender this initiative for the rest of the war. If you stayed around this far, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment as a sacrifice to the algorithm. You can also support us on Patreon and get ad-free early...
That was a great battle. That had me on the edge of my seat. But Saxe came out on top, and I'm happy for that. Mainly because I put my money on him. I love having fun with this. I'm like, who's gonna win? And then I'll make a prediction. But either way, I'm very happy with that. And that was a great video.